Hey everybody, back with another video. As you can see, this is a columns board that I'm looking at. I just put this on the bench and I wasn't going to actually film a video, but I was just testing some boards and stuff. This one actually seems to be working mostly. But when I put it into test mode, and honestly this columns board is kind of interesting. It's a Sega game. It has a 68,000 CPU, a couple ROMs obviously, and I think it uses the same, is it the Sega Saturn or something, or Sega Genesis, I'm not sure, but it's one of those. Maybe I'll turn that down just a little bit. But it's had a little bit of a rough life. There's some parts on here, like there's a cap here that was broken off. This cap here was almost broken off. I already replaced it. I just don't know what type of one goes there. It's probably just a decoupling cap, so it might not matter much. But when I go into test mode, and I think press the start button, I think, input test, and you can see my player 1 button and player 2 button are on. The rest of my player 1 controls are working, but not my button, which is weird. And I can hook up to player 2. Sorry, I'm moving around the camera, of course. Alright, got player 2 hooked up. Right, up, down, left. Okay, so those all work as well, but not my button on either side. And you need the button to actually play the game to, like, you know, switch the thing like Tetris. You kind of flip the jewels around or whatever. Coin works, service works. Obviously, player 1 and player 2 start work. Just make sure. So yeah, that's interesting, right? So I figured I would show you some troubleshooting steps here on troubleshooting the inputs. Alright, so the first thing I wanted to do is just try to activate the switch. I found ground. Here's a little ground spot right here, but I just ohmed out ground on a chip to ground, find a good spot to hook up to. And then I was just coming to my Jamma connect. This is Jamma, so this is like ground, and then this would be technically not used, and then this would be button 3. That's not doing anything. Button 2, button 1, right there, and it's not doing anything, right? It's like on all the time. So that means it's probably shorted. Oh, am I going to be able to do this? Let's see. Let me hook on to one of my leads here and see what our resistance is. If any of these, I would assume, are grounded. See, like that's up right there, or down or something. And button 3 is only getting 51 ohms, and I think button 3 is actually the fire button or whatever. I think they wired up to button 3 for some reason. I'd have to look at the pinouts, but that kind of makes sense because that's the only one that I'm getting. It's not grounded, but I'm getting low ohm ratings, like 50 ohms, versus, you know, on the other non-activated switches, it's pretty high. So that brought me to kind of ohming things out and tracing it back, and it's going through these. I don't know what these are. There could be capacitors. I have to look those up. Let me see if you can actually get in there and see. With a little bit of light, maybe. Nope. I'm gonna have to come on the other side and see what that label is. It's kind of weird. It's like a capacitor, but there's 3 legs to it. So it's like, I don't know what it is. And then it comes into these diode packs. So there's a DAN 80 and there's a DAN 803 and a DAP 803, and it just has to do with instead of a resistor pack or resistor network, I guess, like you can see right here, those are resistor networks. Typically on the control inputs to protect the chips and stuff from any type of voltage spike, you'll see diodes, but in this case they have these diode networks, and one is like anode to cathode and one's the other way, so which way the anode is facing to ground or 5 volts or whatever, that's, I think one's probably tied to 5 volts, one's tied to ground, and then it differs which way the diode's facing. But as you can see here, look at that hole. It's like almost like these were heated up and there's a hole burnt into this DAP 803 and into that one as well. And so I'm going to turn the board off and then we'll look at it. Over. And man, I can barely see now. This is button 3, action button 3 for player 1. And I just basically went to ground, and you can see it's basically shorted. Even though when we had the power hooked up, it wasn't reading a dead short, but without the power hooked up, it's reading a dead short to ground. The other thing is I just was going to trace it. So I traced it right here, and I put a little spot there. And I don't know what that is. It's a capacitor or something. I'm not sure. I have to look it up. What that thing is with the 3 legs. There's 3 legs right there. And it's all, on all of them, it reads, continuity. So I don't know exactly what it's doing. Doesn't read continuity to the middle pin. Oh, interesting. Maybe that's our problem. Not sure. Alright, that's noteworthy. No continuity to the middle pin, but the 2 outer pins. So I gotta look up that part. That part there might be bad as well. But the good news is I can probably pull some spares, because like button 1 and 2 don't seem to be used. As an example. So that's not a problem. And then I trace it from there. So player 2 button 3 comes to this one right here, and player 1 button 3 comes to right there. So those are the 2 diode packs that are bad, and it just so happens those are exactly the ones with the hole in it, like it was on fire or something happened. So I'm going to just pull those real quick and test them. Now, obviously not all of the diodes are bad, but I want to pull them out of circuit and test that. Alright, hopefully you can see this. I don't know. I've been messing around with this quite a bit, and I don't think it's going to end well. This video is not going to end well, I don't believe. Alright, so we have, basically I just wrote down some stuff. You have DAP, I think it's diode array P, I don't know what the P stands for, but it's a common anode. So you have that's probably ground or 5 volts, and then you have your anode, no, your cathode is basically here. So you would be blocking, you would have to have your positive here and your negative here to test it, and your DAN, you would have to have your positive here and your negative there to test it. So let me see, which one is this? Oh my god, I can't even we'll figure it out, because if we put our negative here on pin 1, negative here. Alright, so this is definitely a DAN. Voltage is flowing through the diode this way. So this is a DAN, and it seems to be working. I don't know if you can see that. Good voltage drop until we get to pin right there. It's not shorted, but it's over limit. and I believe that's button 3. Button 3 is not actually used. I was wrong. Button 1 is actually what's used, and I don't know why button 1 is stuck on. But the rest of them read good. But it does have a hole in it, and you can see that that one's bad. I pulled, I don't know if this one is a DAN or not. Let's see. I pulled one from a working board. No, that's a DAP. Yeah, see, something happened. So we know that one's bad, and this is a good replacement. Now this is a DAP, so we have to reverse it. The positive goes on pin 1. And hopefully you can see it in the upper right hand corner there. I know my hands are in the way a little bit, but you get the idea. This one seems like it's okay. And you can reverse it and just make sure that you're just testing it like a normal diode. It's just a diode array. Alright, so the DAP works fine. The DAN is messed up. However, what I discovered was, and I even pulled the capacitor. That capacitor, like this, I've never seen these before, so this is interesting to me. I don't know if it's interesting to anybody else, but I think there's a common right there in the middle, and so it's really 2 capacitors in one. You have like positive here and negative, positive here and negative. I tested it out, and those capacitors are fine. That was for button 3, and I had pulled it out down here. However, if you look at where button 3 is, it's, where was it at? This is unused button 3. And if you check out, let me move this over here. We know button 3 is screwed up, and if you plug in this in reverse, you would end up with 12 volts on button 3. And so somebody plugged in, most likely, the Jamma connector upside down and blew out those resistor packs. Now, unfortunately, I think they blew out more than that, because if I come to ground, God, I hope I'm explaining this well enough for y'all to follow. If I come to ground and I come to, button 3, nothing, right? But if I come to ground, this is where button 3 is, and it's still messed up. That's button 3. Even with all the resistor pack, or the resistor network, the diode arrays, both common cathode and common anode, even with both of those removed, it's still messed up. And that comes to this custom chip, custom Sega chip, which is a 315526. So I am pretty sure that this is bad, even though, button 1 is not reading grounded, and it's not messed up like button 3 is. It still did something to this chip and blew it out, and so button 1 is reading effed up. So anyway, this kind of sucks. I'm gonna replace the resistor network and the diode, and I will power it on one more time. But I'm pretty sure that I tested the resistor network. It tests fine. The capacitors are fine. It's this custom IC, which is a custom I/O chip, and so that means that this board is not going to be repaired. I'll have to put it to the side and hope I get another junk board, because they don't make replacements of these. You have to steal it from a different board or something, which kind of sucks. All right, I pulled the other DAN that was bad as well. I replaced one of them because I had a spare. I robbed one from another board. I guess I didn't do a good job pushing that all the way in. I might fix that because it's a little bit raised on this side, but whatever. Pulled the other one, which is player 2, button 3, and you can obviously see that it is this is a Dan, right? Yeah. So if I come to the last pin, and then it's hard to hold. Oh, what the heck? Yeah, that one's bad. Right there. And this one also has a little hole in it, and it's the same pin where you had the 12 volts probably flowing through it, blowing it up. So let me power it on. Well, what else did I do? I grabbed some spare Sega boards that I had, just looking to see if I had one of those I/O chips, but all I have is this 315-5580 5338. These are probably from like some other Sega games in the 90s. 5338. Who knows if those work. So yeah, I didn't have any spares. Here's another Sega board. 5338. I don't know which one that is, but I robbed the diode, the DAN, and the DAP from this board. So it's always good to have spare boards. Unfortunately, don't have one where I can replace that I/O chip. Kind of sucks, because this game is fully working besides that. All because somebody most likely plugged in the harness back. Still working fine. But if I press the test button, input, button 1 is stuck on. And it's got to be this bad I/O chip right here. So, unfortunately, a failed repair. But sometimes I did learn something, because I had no idea what a DAP, diode array P, or N, PNP, NP. I don't know. But diode array, I never even seen those before. I didn't know what those were. They're basically a 4148 with a common anode or a common cathode wired up that way. So, and then you also had these little capacitors here, which look like they're dual capacitors. Like one's on one side of the ground and one's on the other side of the ground. So, learned something, but didn't fix anything. That's it.